appreciative of you all coming here to celebrate Black media, Black and minority businesses and entrepreneurship with the Rochester Association of Black Journalists. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. Thank you so much. We're going to have to get a little more hype, man. We're here to celebrate, right? There we go. Thank you. I need you all to hype me up. It has been my pleasure, along with a phenomenal group of people, to coordinate such an event like this as the Rochester Association of Black Journalists work together tirelessly to ensure that African Americans, minorities are portrayed fairly and balanced in the local media. And we appreciate you as RABJ celebrates our status as a 501c3 not-for-profit organization that we just reached a couple weeks ago. So thank you for supporting. We're going to get right into it. This is going to be a phenomenal, engaging networking experience. Please trade business cards. There are several students here. Connect with people. A job opportunity may await you. We appreciate you so much. And without further ado, I am going to introduce our first guest speaker, who has had the opportunity to craft a creative communications channel and is making impact through clothing. Isn't that something? So we're really excited to have her a part of the team. Miss Helene Biandudi Hofer is an award-winning journalist and host of WXXI's Need to Know. She is also the founder and host of The Empty Hanger, a multimedia project telling the stories of people behind the clothing they choose to wear. As our keynote speaker, she will talk about how she's been able to use her voice and her platform to generate buzz about the inspiring stories and often the untold stories. Please, at this time, welcome Helene Biandudi Hofer.
I thought you were going to say substitute and they will yell at me. You have to do the mic. Yeah, of course.
So first, good morning and congratulations to RABJ on their 501c3 status. That's great news, and I know it's something that's been you've been working on for quite some time. So congratulations on that, and I appreciate you inviting me to speak today. So a little disclaimer, bear with me. I'm on prednisone. I've got a back issue that gives me dry mouth. So if you see me nurturing this class, that's the reason why. So just to give you a heads up. I am not sure if you've noticed this in day-to-day life, but there are families in our world today, and sometimes some of the different family members, they share a common trade or craft. So for example, there might be a family with several folks in law enforcement, families with a bunch of people in the beauty business. There are families with 10 to 15 teachers. For my husband, it was bricklaying. He comes from a family of bricklayers. And when you think about it, we all know one family, perhaps it's your own family, where several members pursue the family business. So for the Biandudi family business, it was the field of ministry. I've got tons of pastors in my family. So my grandpa JB in Congo, Kinshasa, he left his job as a banker and a political influencer to become a minister. My grandpa Lou in Detroit, Michigan, was the pastor of Friendship Baptist Church for decades. My grandpa Fred in Mobridge, South Dakota, he was a pastor in his own right. He used to drive around the streets of this small town, and he would yell Bible tracts or Bible passages from his car so he could make sure that everybody heard him. I have an uncle in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's a pastor, and I have an aunt in upstate Minnesota, and she is a chaplain. So that is our family business. And when I was 20, my grandpa Lou in Detroit said to me, you know, I got a question for you. I have to retire soon. I can't be in ministry forever, so when are you going to pursue this path? And without skipping a beat, I said, Grandpa, I said, TV will be my pulpit, and journalism will be my ministry. And just as there are responsibilities for our church leaders throughout the world, there is this incredible responsibility when you have the title journalist connected to your name. You seek, you uncover, you discover, you explore, you enlighten, you dig for truth. These are all things that we work to do. And we do these because we want to foster understanding, bring change, sometimes start a movement, right former wrongs, and so on. And everything I just said is kind of like this downloaded checklist that we all carry within us as journalists. But it's nearly impossible to check off all of those things with the varied stories that we pursue on a daily basis. We have finite resources, limited time, newsrooms with serious deadlines. It's just not possible. And our brains cannot possibly hold 6 to 8 different things that we're supposed to be doing and checking off to bring impact to a story or to inspire. But researchers say that your brain can focus on 3 main things. Your brain actually thrives when you focus on 3 specific things. So, I have decided, and I've been doing this for the past several years, I call it the power of thirds. There are 3 things that I focus on in an effort to promote positivity, explore issues, and uplift our diverse communities. And the first thing is you seek the untold. With every story, there are, millions of stories. You think like about the exact same subject, but the thing is there's a very good chance that there's an angle to that story that nobody has pursued. So you dig in, you find things out, you ask questions. This is all called enterprise reporting, when you go after something on your own. And these are the types of stories that sometimes people pitch to us, sometimes we eavesdrop on conversations, as journalists are really good at doing that. Sometimes you see a story on the news, and something innately says to you, I like that story, but I know there's another side that has to be told. So I will never forget the day when I met Moselle Jones Grisham, and this was in 2014. And she reached out to me, and she said her teenage son had been missing since 2009. She believed he was alive. She didn't think law enforcement had done enough to pursue leads that could potentially lead to his whereabouts, and she needed help. I would tell you it was probably one of the most heartbreaking stories that I'd ever worked on. She told me that, one night she left, his name is Dominique, her son, at home with his older siblings. She went out to get party supplies because they were planning to celebrate a big hockey win. He was named MVP of his hockey team that day, and they wanted to celebrate. She comes home, and she said, the siblings told her, oh, Dominique got a phone call. And in true teenage fashion, he left the house and went to hang out with his friends. But Dominique never came home. And what was so crushing about this is when I visited Moselle's home, there was a shrine on the whole first floor dedicated to Dominique. And it was as though his presence was still very much there. She told me the things he loves to do, the sports he loves to play, and all in present tense. So to most newsrooms, this story is what we would call a dead story, because there are absolutely no leads. This happened in 2009. I reached out to the investigators, still an active case, but they didn't have anything. And it was like a dead end, but it wasn't. So you seek the untold. So whenever we hear these horrific stories about young people that have gone missing, and when you see their faces on the TV screen, primarily in the past, you don't see the faces of black and brown young people. You would solely see the faces of white children. That has changed in recent years, but it's still an issue. So what I realized was that was a story. Young, black, missing, ignored, forgotten, question mark. So I contacted Roddy Brown, who Moselle told me was one of the only reporters in Rochester who consistently checked in on her when her son went missing. I reached out to the investigator with the RPD for this case. I met with grieving parents of other children who were missing and believed that they too had been forgotten. And I also connected with a national organization whose sole focus is to ensure that black and brown faces who have gone missing are on television and are not overlooked by the media. And so the result was an entire show in 2015 all about Dominique. We spent months gathering information, videos, we did video stories, on-set interviews. We brought together a great group, and the sole purpose was not only just to raise awareness, but to give Moselle, just for a moment, a sense of peace. The story didn't go anywhere. I mean, didn't get retweeted thousands of times. There wasn't much fanfare. I didn't win an award, nothing like that. But I learned a year later that it had been shared on social media and that it eventually got picked up by Dateline because they saw this as a cold case story that people needed to know about. And that is what can happen when you seek the untold. The second goal and responsibility that my brain can kind of tap into is, with this whole power of three, is working to incorporate an element of surprise. And that's what we try to do in a lot of our stories. Let's bring something that will surprise people, because that, just like seeking the untold, can make a story memorable. So when I launched my web series, The Empty Hanger, I was swimming in a sea of these stories about clothing and dress with tons of different surprising elements, things that would challenge you and change your perspective. So I went to an event. It was a Vietnam War screening and a panel discussion that I was moderating, and I met a beautiful woman by the name of Ginny Nguyen. And Ginny is from South Vietnam. Her family escaped in late April of 1975. This is when the Communist North captured Saigon. They lived in a variety of different refugee camps, and they were finally sponsored and brought to the United States when she came to New York. So Ginny is very active in the local Vietnamese community in Rochester. I had seen photographs of her in the DMC, always wearing like some type of outfit, and I'm like, it's got to be a traditional Vietnamese garb. So as soon as I met her, I set up an interview with her for The Empty Hanger. We sat down, and I learned the purpose behind this outfit that she chooses to wear quite often when she goes out in public for events focused on Vietnam. And first of all, this dress is called an ao dai. So it looks like a dress, but it's really like a pantsuit with this mid-cap tunic, and it has slits on the side, and it's incredibly uncomfortable, she told me to wear. But she said she wears it because it's a part of her culture that she can share with our community. And she said it's a way to keep Vietnam and my people front and center so people don't forget who we are. She said it's also a way to thank this country for all that they did to save my family. That is an element of surprise that I was not expecting to hear from her when we met. And it's so easy, we live in this really busy, chaotic world. We're constantly running, doing, and going places, and we can forget that when we stop, ask questions, inquire, and be curious, you will be amazed at sometimes the stories that I've been able to find of people in terms of the reasons why they wear what they do. And then there's a third thing. And this is the power of thirds. This is the very last thing. I pursue this. I think it's one of the most rewarding things in the field of journalism, is that we have the ability to help build bridges and connect people. A few years ago, my company started working with a nonprofit in San Francisco by the name of Not in Our Town, solely focused on addressing issues of hate, racism, and bullying throughout our country. And Not in Our Town works to create inclusive communities. So I produced a few documentaries with them. It was primarily focused on bringing change and healing to communities that were really suffering a lot of pain and distrust between law enforcement and residents. So from here in Rochester to Camden, New Jersey to Arlington, Texas, I went and I met with residents and law enforcement, and I tried to understand why these relationships were broken and what could be done to repair them. So there's one story that I absolutely loved, and it was in Camden, New Jersey, and I met someone by the name of Mark Lee, and everybody called him Dickie Mo. And he gave me this full disclaimer when we met and during his interview, and he said, listen, I take ownership of what I have done that helped to lead to the demise of Camden. He said to me, I brought drugs into the streets of our neighborhood, and I know that I played a role. But now, several years later, after a short stint in prison, Mark Lee is working with his arresting officer to mentor young people in Camden, New Jersey. And I got to see the two of them working to build bridges where there were communication glitches, and still they're still working to repair the distrust that exists. And they weren't only working as partners, but they were working as friends. They had become great friends. And law enforcement owned their part of what they did in creating conflict and through profiling, racism, and unfair practices that really led everyone on the police force to being fired, and they had to reapply for their jobs with new responsibilities to be community-oriented officers with a focus on community. So seeking the untold, sharing an element of surprise, and building bridges, the rule of thirds. They can all be accomplished through partnerships and collaborations like we see here today. We've got media folks, business folks, community folks who are coming together with this collective passion to see our city and the people in our city to thrive. So you heard Rashad say, don't leave unless you've connected with someone. I would say don't leave until you've connected with 3 people. Exchange business cards, exchange contact information, specifically with people that you believe you can join forces with in order to make a change, because we've all been bequeathed with the responsibility to see change in Rochester, and we can only do it if we do it together. So thank you.